A frustrating end to the Royals series in Houston. We'll give you our thoughts on it next on Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned in to another edition of Locked On Royals in the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. You also can listen to this podcast on wherever you download podcasts: Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast, Odyssey, and YouTube. Just be sure to hit the follow button and subscribe. For you first-time listeners tuning in, I'm sure it's out of frustration after what occurred in Game 3 tonight in Houston. But here's how the format works. We bring you episodes Monday through Friday, 30-minute episodes, and we also have a 60-second recap on our YouTube channel after each and every Royals game. Now, this week and the beginning part of next week are going to be a little bit different. We don't usually do this, but I'm going to be recording our Mailbag Friday segment where you send in questions to me and I answer them. I'm going to be doing that tomorrow around 9 or 10 a.m. So get your questions in now. Wanted to get 2 episodes out today so I could hit those 5 for the week. And we'll be putting that episode out, the Mailbag Friday one, in the early hours on Friday morning. So you can probably look for that around 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. and you can watch it then. If something drastic happens between 10 a.m. on Thursday and then 10 a.m. on Friday, well, unfortunately, I've already recorded the episode, so I'll try to give my thoughts on social media or something like that. Now, before we dive into tonight's game, I want to let you know that today's show is brought to you by Supply House. And with Supply House, you can join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. You know, I've always thought this in doing this podcast, working in media, that as a host, these are the games that certainly piss you off, but they're also going to give you the most content. If the Royals would have lost tonight 5-0, like, you're not feeling the same emotion, the same anger as we're all feeling tonight. Like, don't get me wrong. Even if I appear to have a cool head, tonight's game pissed me off. It was frustrating. It should be frustrating to everyone. But as baseball has taught us for so long, that the wins are never as good as they seem and the losses are never as bad as they seem. And what I mean by that is you got to go back a couple of days for when the Royals were 16-2 over an 18-game stretch. You would think after tonight that they have lost 6 straight games and have given up 100 runs and haven't scored. Because those games in which you lead and you blow them in the final 2 innings, it always brings out the true emotion. The frustration, the anger. You want somebody to lose their job, whether that be a coach, a manager, or a player. It brings a lot of anger out in people. And I could understand it because we've all been there before, right? A game in which you're watching a 1-run game and they blow it in the 8th and 9th and you are irate. Somebody's got to lose their job for that. But baseball is that unique sport where you play so often that, as I said, a walk-off win last Friday night felt great, and the Royals had won 7 in a row, and they had Cole Reagans on the bump the next day. It was over 30,000 at Kauffman Stadium. They could do no wrong. We weren't even paying attention to the offensive struggles anymore, even though the 2 runs they scored on Friday night were the Manfred runners, the ghost runner. Like, that's how much the offense struggled against Boston. And they didn't play well on Saturday. And they didn't play that well on Sunday. They played well on Monday against Houston. And they were competitive last night, and they were competitive tonight. We're 45 games through the season. And I got a few thoughts, and we might go a little bit long in segment number 1, though it's going to be a jam-packed episode. You're 45 games into the season, and you're 25-20. You could be a little bit better than that. The Detroit Tigers are riding high after sweeping the Red Sox. They walked them off in back-to-back nights, and they have the best record in baseball. Detroit's feeling fantastic. Minnesota fans are feeling fantastic. They've won 10 in a row. But in nights like this, or on nights like this, I should say, it is good to remind yourself that there's a long ways to go. And guess what? A loss like this is probably going to happen again. And we're probably all going to have the same reaction. And a dominant win that we saw in that series finale against the White Sox is going to happen again, and it probably is going to happen to a team better than the White Sox. It's just how it goes in baseball. Now, for the actual game itself, I don't believe we need to dive into the first 7 innings. Now, we can pull bits and pieces from that part of the game, but we all know what we need to talk about. And those of you listening, I feel have the same idea here of how you want me to approach this exact debate, which is, should Matt Quatraro have sent Michael Lorenzen back out there in the 8th inning? On top of this, idea, this phrase of baseball being weird, baseball is so unpredictable. When you talk about bullpen management, and funny enough, we talked about this in today's episode that came out, early afternoon, that when a bullpen move works out, we rarely talk about it. Right? If Michael Lorenzen was pulled in the 7th inning, and Daniel Lynch gets the 8th, and Daniel Lynch goes 1-2-3, and it's 3-2 going into the 9th, and Carlos Estevez, gets 3 outs in the 9th inning. Do we talk about how great of a move that was? No. We talk about Michael Lorenzen's start. We talk about Daniel Lynch pitching well. We talk about Carlos Estevez pitching well in the 9th. Right? That's how we go about it. Very rarely do we watch a baseball game and say, you know what? The manager pushed all the right buttons with the bullpen right on Monday night, needing to go to Schreiber and then needing to go to Ursig and then Estevez. Like, technically, you pushed the right buttons after things went haywire for a bit. We don't talk about that, though. We talk about the 7 runs they put up. We talk about Ursig being dominant once again. We talk about Estevez working around the leadoff single. That's what we evaluate. But when things go sideways, when you do make the wrong decision, you leave somebody out there too long, you call upon somebody who doesn't have it, right? Whose fault is it? Now, some of you blame the pitcher. A lot of you blame the manager, right? The Royals brought in Steven Cruz, and Steven Cruz didn't have it for the first time in 2 years. He just didn't have it at all on Monday night. Was that a bad move to bring him in because it didn't work out? Well, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. It felt like the right time because it was 7-0. But since he didn't pitch well, whose fault is it? Was it Matt Quatraro's putting him in that spot? Or was it Steven Cruz not having his best stuff? We truly only want to bring that criticism to the forefront when it costs the team the lead. For example, if Michael Lorenzen gets through the 8th inning, and he got the first out in the 8th, if he gets through the 8th inning with the lead intact, we're not talking about how great it was to leave Lorenzen back in there. Man, that was a gutsy call by Matt Quatraro, as we shouldn't. We should more so give praise to Michael Lorenzen pitching his ass off through 8 innings. But if Michael Lorenzen didn't go out in the 7th and Daniel Lynch went in there and blew it, what do you think we're talking about? Why would you go to Daniel Lynch with 3 righties due up in a 1-run game? Why would you do that? If you went to Steven Cruz, who was warming up in the 7th, and Steven Cruz didn't have it again, what are we talking about? Why would you go to Steven Cruz in a spot like that? He clearly didn't have it on Monday night, and he didn't have it again tonight. Or if you went to Carlos Estevez in the 8th for a 6-out save. We saw him get 6 outs in Detroit in that series finale on Easter Sunday. And let's say he blew it in the 8th, or he blew it in the 9th. Why'd you go 2 innings of Carlos Estevez? That feels like too much there, right? It's only the result. We very rarely, go over the process, the thinking behind why a manager stuck with somebody or went to somebody else. We can use the argument, well, Michael Lorenzen's the number 5 starter, and he pitched well for 7 innings. He did his job. Turn it over to the bullpen. Don't put him in a spot where he could lose the game. And he lost the game tonight. I'm not putting that on him, though, because the single, the opposite field single from Dorenzo or DeZenzo, whatever it is, like maybe that was the time you go, all right, we're going to Daniel Lynch here. But you had Dubon coming up. And Dubon didn't have any home runs on the year, had a bloop double in his previous at-bat against the shift. And I will say this in baseball, if somebody goes against the shift, they're not changing it for the next at-bat. They are playing the odds and the averages and the probability that he does that again. And sometimes it burns you. Oftentimes it doesn't because you're playing the probability there. The first ground out of the inning, Michael Massey was positioned up the middle. If there's no shift, that's a leadoff single. And then maybe he gets the third on the single by DeZenzo. So shifts, if you're positioned correctly, we don't talk about it like we do with the successful bullpen moves. We just say, oh, good positioning, right spot, right time. But when it goes against you, man, is it frustrating. And I was frustrated seeing yet another double by Dubon, just drop on the left field line. Drew Waters played it horribly in the corner. He would tell you that. Everybody would say that. It was a bad play in left field, and it did cost them the tying run. And I do believe that was Michael Lorenzen's last hitter regardless. Top of the order was coming up. Jeremy Pena was 3 for 3 against them. And then the tying run comes in. You got to go to Estevez. And Estevez didn't make a bad pitch, right? There were some people on my timeline saying, well, yet again, Estevez blows it. He got up 0-2 on Jeremy Pena and threw a 97-mile-an-hour fastball that was damn near his eyes. And he just guided it into left. He had a great series. And he's been a great player all year for the Houston Astros. That is a baseball moment where you tip your cap. If you are a former pitcher, you tip your cap and go, I made a good pitch. He had a good swing on it. What more can you do? And even if Jeremy Pena had inside fastballs and hit them, that was not a strike. That was a well-located pitch. If he took that pitch, it would have still been a good moment for Jeremy Pena. But he singled, and it was another blue hit. The double for Dubon was hit well under 90 miles an hour. Drew Waters was shaded over toward left center. It didn't work out. And I know that's going to be irritating to those listening out there that want me to point the finger at somebody and say, it's your fault. I can completely understand and agree that being a manager comes with the territory. When you make a move like Matt Quatraro did tonight and it doesn't work out, you are going to be criticized for it. That's just the way it goes. Every manager in baseball has these same criticisms. And there's not a single manager out there, not even Dave Roberts in LA. And believe me, I know a lot of Dodgers fans that criticize Dave Roberts. You're talking about a guy that won 100-plus games and won the World Series last year. There will be a night where the Dodgers blow it and the blame goes at the front door of Dave Roberts. The best managers out there, the guys that have turned around everything, like, you're going to be criticized for that because it's what happens in this sport. We all know what happens in this sport. But what I would try to urge people to maybe understand and look deeper into this game, like, there were a couple of reasons why Lorenzen went back out there. And if you are the person that went, he was at 77 pitches, but I'm not risking another inning, I want Daniel Lynch out there. I can understand it. Daniel Lynch has been really good. And if the Royals would have lost the game tonight with Daniel Lynch on the mound, I would have understood the logic. Daniel Lynch has been so effective this year, and I could see him getting outs against righties, especially the bottom of the order. Hindsight, being 2020, if I could go back in time, would love to see that happen. But the logic in sending Michael Lorenzen back out there made sense for a few reasons. Number one, he had just dominated in the seventh. I mean, completely wiped those three hitters off the face of the earth. Hit 97 on the black for his first strikeout of the inning, and then just had a tailing changeup to Caratini to get his second strikeout to end the frame. He's under 80 pitches. Ursig's not available. Schreiber's not available. The Astros have a lot of right-handed hitters in there. So clearly, Matt Quatraro did not want to give Daniel Lynch a full inning against three straight righties and more righties coming up at the top of the order. He didn't want to go to Steven Cruz in that spot because Steven Cruz just wasn't that good on Monday night. And there was a chance that he didn't have it again. He was not going to throw Ursig or Schreiber no matter what. Carlos Estevez got up because it got into do or die mode, and he was going to have to go out there and work multiple innings. And if the Royals and Astros went into extras, I would imagine that Daniel Lynch would get the ball and try to close out the game. So that's why they did it. And here's what I'll end with, and then we'll talk about the offense. Because, again, there was this misconception that one of my tweets out there was about hammering the pitching staff. And I just simply said, that using Schreiber, Ursic, and Estevez on Monday night when you were up 7-0 in the 6th inning bit them tonight. It just bit their availability. It hurt who was going to be throwing the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning. If Lucas Ursic is available tonight, Michael Lorenzen does not go back out for the 8th inning. It goes Ursic and Estevez. If you piled on more runs on Monday, I mean, they didn't score off Houston's bullpen all series long. If you piled more runs to that 7-0 lead and got it to 10-1, and you use Cruz, and you use Serpa, and you use Stratton, guess what? It's easy tonight. You barely used anybody on Tuesday night. You got your full disposal here. You got everybody you can use to get those final 6 outs. But because they didn't, and Lorenzen had a low pitch count, there was that extra urge to, let's see if we can get 3 outs here, and then give it to Estevez. Now, if Michael Lorenzen gave up a leadoff single and a walk, and it's 1st and 2nd, he would have been pulled. But they rolled the dice against the 9-hole hitter who hasn't been that great this year, and he blooped another double down the line against the shift. It's baseball, unfortunately, and it can be frustrating, and it pisses you off. In games like this, I try to understand why the move was made rather than have the immediate reaction of what a stupid move. That cost them. Everybody needs to be fired. I just would rather like to know the reasoning. Why did you go to this guy, or why did you keep this guy back out there? Because believe me, if they pulled Lorenzen and Daniel Lynch blew it, or Estevez blew it, or Cruz blew it, we're talking about why did they pull Michael Lorenzen with less than 80 pitches? Just my thought on that. Okay, we're going to take our first break of the show. When we come back, let's talk about a glaring problem in the lineup. It's not Hunter Renfroe, as I brought up on today's episode. It's about the middle of the order, and 2 spots specifically. I'll tell you about it next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. The only sponsor we're going to be bringing up in tonight's show is Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades. That's Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. It's no secret that this offense has been the main red flag of this team. There's just no denying it. I can't sit here in front of this mic and say, well, they did score 7 runs on Monday night. They're going to be just fine. The tough part about this sport is I really don't know. I don't know if this offense is going to all of a sudden hit their stride and never look back. In my opinion, the likelier scenario is they just continue to go through ups and downs until they add more power, more meat to this lineup that can compete with the top half of the American League. And technically, they're already in the top half of the American League. They hold a playoff spot right now in the toughest division in the American League, by far, I might add. And we'll talk about that in the final segment. But they've got a serious issue in the 3 and 4 spots right now. And it looked like for a little bit that Salvador Perez was coming out of a bad slump. He had been really unlucky in the first part of the season, the first couple weeks of April. And in the end, it was just this maybe confidence moment for him, seeing the ball actually find the gap, seeing a ball go over the wall, though he's only got 2 home runs so far. But it looked like old Salvador Perez. Maybe it was confidence. Maybe it was just trusting himself. He's an experienced guy. He's been through slumps before. and he's going to go through them again. He's probably going to have another one after this. You're just hoping that it comes after a really hot stretch. Vinnie Pasquantino, exact same thing. Vinnie was really cold in April, and then he started to catch fire a little bit in May. He was becoming one of their better hitters, and now we're seeing the struggles again. And Vinny's not hitting as well with runners in scoring position. Same thing goes for Salvador Perez. And both of them are not hitting the ball really that hard right now. And it's going to happen. And as I've said before, when it comes to hitters in the big leagues, if you're not a guy that can draw a walk every once in a while, your slumps are going to be really bad. Your slumps are going to be noticeable because you're not getting on base at all. If you go through a 1 for 25 stretch with no walks, we're going to remember that 0 for 20 stretch because you just weren't getting on base at all. When Jonathan India was struggling, he still was walking a good bit. So it didn't really seem as bad. When Bobby goes through a slump, it's not that noticeable because he's still getting on base a lot. But for Vinnie and Salvy, it was a huge problem tonight. It was a huge problem in this series. And unfortunately, this offense is not good enough top to bottom to have 3 and 4 hole hitters hitting like this or going through extended slumps like this. Not at the same time. They just can't afford it. You have Jonathan India heating up over the last 2 weeks. Bobby Witt Jr. has been playing at an MVP level. You are getting production from Drew Waters and Kyle Isbell. You are getting really good production from Michael Garcia, who homered tonight. And yet 2 guys you counted on for nearly 200 runs batted in last year are just not doing much. Tonight, they were a combined 0 for 8. Vinny did walk once, and it was on a pretty good at bat. I want to say he worked 8 or 9 pitches. Struck out twice. Salvador Perez struck out those 2 times. And Vinny's OPSing at 633. Salvy is OPSing at 597. There is a list of players in this lineup that are OPSing better than Vinny and Salvy. Jonathan India being one, who has not had many extra base hits this year. Michael Garcia, though we can praise him because he's been one of their better players, probably the second best player next to Bobby Witt Jr. But he's a name that going into the year, you were not expecting at any point for him to be OPSing higher than Salvy and Vinny. Mark Canha is OPSing higher than both of them. Kyle Isbell is OPSing much higher than both of them. In fact, he is OPSing 110 points more than Salvador Perez. Michael Massey's not OPSing as high as Salvy or Vinny, but he's at 524, and Salvy's at 597. Drew Waters is OPSing at 698. Now, Freddie Fermin is OPSing at 578. He's also the backup catcher of this team, and he's not known for power. Very rarely does he leave the yard. That just can't happen. And I'll start with Vinny here, because Vinny, in his last 7 games, and truthfully, in the last 15, has not been that bad. He's hitting 297 over his last 15. And you would think, right, that's a great total. That's a great number, near 300. You take that every single time. Over his last 30, though, he's hitting 223. So it's been a better stretch of late, but it's still not the Vinny they really need. And with Vinnie Pasquantino, it's not to really be overly critical, but he is the 3-hole hitter. And he's been very critical of himself this year. And hopefully he's starting to see some things change at the plate. He's figuring out some things, but you got to have more from your 3-hole hitter. He's only got 6 home runs on the year and 25 runs batted in. Salvador Perez is a much different story. He is 5 for his last 30. He's 14 for his last 60, and he's 27 for his last 117. In these last 30 at-bats, he has struck out over 30% of the time. He's getting on base at a 161 clip and slugging 200. It was an atrocity in Houston these last 3 games. 0 for 5, 0 for 4, 0 for 4, 0 for 13 total with 6 strikeouts. And there were multiple 3-pitch strikeouts swinging at things way out of the zone. I know that he's a bad ball hitter, But in stretches like that, you almost wonder if just dialing it back a little bit could help him see a few more pitches. Because big league arms are not stupid. They know that in a 2-0 count, leaving Salvador Perez a hittable pitch is really damn stupid. They're going to throw him something out of the zone, and he's very aggressive, and he's going to swing at it. But that has to change. When we talk about this offense and the inconsistencies, it's great to see Jonathan India play better. For Bobby Witt Jr. to be hitting .312. Michael Garcia, multi-hit game and hitting .295. Mark Canha doing what they got Mark Canha to do. Get on base, hit .265. Kyle Isbell hitting .272. Drew Waters hitting .273. Like, we can look at Hunter Renfroe and go, 176 is not good. Yeah, that's pretty obvious. But I was not counting on Vinnie Pasquantino and Salvador Perez to be hitting .220 and .221 at this point in the season. I would have thought that one of them would be much higher than that. I could understand one of them struggling this early on in the season. And maybe the best part about this is we're 45 games into the year. It's still so incredibly early. And Salvador Perez has a good track record. Vinnie Pasquantino has a good track record. You can count on those guys. But in series losses like this, and series losses like the Boston series, you got to point to that. They just weren't good enough. They didn't drive in enough runs. And that is going to lose you series throughout this season. They'll have an off day to get right, get back home, and they'll be taking on a red-hot St. Louis team over the weekend. We'll take our final break of the show. When we come back, let's talk about the AL Central and why I believe it's putting more stress and anxiety on the fan base, but not so much the players. That's coming up on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. One last reminder, because this will be the only time I can do it. We're bringing you this episode, of course, tonight, but tomorrow morning, a Thursday, I will be pre-recording a Mailbag Friday. So if you have any question on this team, either direct message me on Twitter or respond to this right after I post it. And it has to be in by about 10 a.m. tomorrow, because 10 a.m. is when I'm going to start recording, and then I will have that scheduled to post on Friday. If anything big happens on Thursday afternoon or evening, I apologize, but I'll be en route to a wedding. And then Saturday and Sunday, you can expect possibly a recap for one of the games in St. Louis, but I'll also have the wedding on Saturday, and then I'll be flying to San Francisco to be there Sunday through Wednesday. I will be catching two of those games in the Bay Area between the Royals and the Giants. To wrap up tonight's show, the American League Central is incredibly frustrating if you're a Royals fan, you're a Twins fan, because everybody keeps winning. Every time you look at this division, somebody's on a winning streak. It's absurd that the Minnesota Twins have won 10 in a row, and they're still 5.5 back of Detroit. That's how good Detroit's been. The Tigers are 14 games over 500, and I don't like to toot my own horn all the time, but I did pick them to win the division. So far, it's looking pretty good. Cleveland's not been bad. They're just 6-4 over their last 10, 25-18. They did lose their series finale to Milwaukee today, but they won the series, and they shut out the Brewers in Game 1 and Game 2. The Twins will see them over the weekend. Now, the Twins have won 10 in a row. They just swept Baltimore in a doubleheader, and Baltimore looks to be completely out of it at this point. 15-26 on the year, 9 games back. So if you want to feel like the sky is falling after back-to-back series losses, Baltimore fans are probably scratching their head and wondering what's next. I mean, are people going to actually lose their job? Are they going to trade off a lot of the pieces we've known to love? 11 games under 500. The Royals, fortunately, are in third place. They're 4.5 games back, but 4.5 games back in the toughest division in the American League right now. So 25-20. Minnesota's 23-20. And get this. The Chicago White Sox just swept the Cincinnati Reds, I believe. They've won 3 in a row. They won again tonight. So the White Sox now are 14-29. They have one less loss than the Baltimore Orioles. But they're 14.5 game backs of Detroit. It's just a division that's very bloody right now. And I mean bloody in a good way. They're just beating up on teams. They're an aggressive and just scrappy bunch. We've known this about the Central for 2 years. A bunch of small market clubs that have done well in the last 2 years, and they know how to win not always with a big payroll. And so these series losses, and this is what I gathered tonight, because I was watching the Red Sox and Tigers game on my laptop. I'm watching the Tigers walk off Boston. You're going, man, again, they're winning again. This afternoon, I watched the Twins and Orioles for a little bit. Like the Twins winning 10 in a row. And you feel like they're right behind you, which now they are. They're a game back of you. And Minnesota looked dead in the water. But that's also showing you how long the season is. This season is long. You're going to go through good stretches and you're going to go through bad stretches. And right now, Minnesota's in a great stretch. Detroit's in a great stretch. Cleveland's in a great stretch. The Royals still have been in a really good stretch despite going 2-4 over the last 6. But they are almost skewing our image of how good the Royals have to be right now. It's not going to be this way forever. They're not going to have all 5 teams winning at the same time. And being 4.5 games back on May 14th is not the end of the world. I'm not trying to say that you can't be upset about anything. I'm really not. But the Central is really good. We can expect it to be a tough and competitive division. It's also not going to be this good all season long. So it's putting extra stress and anxiety on you thinking every little game is do or die, because if they fall back to 6.5 games back, it's over. They can't make it to the postseason. They can't win the division. There will come a time when Detroit hits a rough patch, and when Cleveland does, and when Minnesota does. You don't really need to worry about the White Sox, but I will say, hey, good on them for playing good baseball. They've responded well in the month of May. But that's where I'm at with the Central. Is it frustrating? Absolutely. Is it time to panic about the division? Absolutely not. Well, that's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. Thank you for making Locked On Royals your first listen today. For your second, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. And you can find the Locked On MLB Game Night on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. We will be not putting out anything in the day or evening tomorrow. The Royals will be off, but we will be having that Mailbag Friday posting very, very early on that Friday. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.